Hello and welcome everyone to the show. This is Energy Readings with Shelby Aesthetic. Tonight's guest is Ronda Starky. I'm super excited about this show, and I want to introduce Ronda here in just a moment. But first, I do want to make just a few announcements on some things that are coming up for the rest of this month and into September. I tried to go ahead and book a couple of different shows in advance because I'm such a procrastinator. I always wait for the last minute to do things. I love living my life like that. Okay, so today is the 29th of August, 2018. I appreciate everybody that's joining us, whether you're here live or listening in archives. We are broadcasting from IntuiTalks.com. It's an amazing network, a spiritual network for like-minded individuals. If you are interested in building your own spiritual website, this is a great place to do it. You can do them for free. There's also different packages if you'd like to have a podcast show or classroom. There's all kinds of different opportunities with IntuiTalks. So check it out. The lady that runs it, Jenny, she's really amazing. She's awesome. Next week is going to be an interesting show also. I'm going to have Reverend Barb on. And, she's a teacher and a student of A Course in Miracles. And she's going to be talking on spiritual guidance and the harmony of yourself, trusting in yourself, which is always a really great topic. The following week is the 12th of September, and we're going to do the second part of the Inside the Chakra series. And then the following week after that is September 19th, and we'll finish up the third Inside the Chakra series. So last week's show was the first part, and I know I have a couple of shows in between the series, but I think it all kind of ties together anyway. I had a great meditation at the end of last week's show. So when we go into the second part of the series, we're going to be discussing secondary chakras and meridians and things like that, and also we'll continue on with meditation. And then the third and final part of the series will go into the different layers of the chakras. So anyway, it's a lot of fun talking about that stuff. To me it is anyway. And I could do it all day long. So just join us on the upcoming shows. Also, there's lots of different shows coming up on IntuiTalks. So check them out. Curious Times. She's on, Chris, she's on almost every night. But she has a lot of shows coming up. I think Friday she's got one with Selva, and then she's got one on the 1st with Kimber, I believe. And the Angel Meadows show is also on IntuiTalks on September 2nd. They're doing a meditation series on that show. You can check out that. That's a fun show. I like that show. I have to listen to most of this stuff in archives because I can never seem to. I'm either sleeping or I'm not available when they do these shows. And then there's one called, it's a series called Empowering Women, and that is going to be September 2nd. It's a series of 14 Meta Walks from the Small Elk Sacred Energy, so that should be kind of interesting too. IntuiTalks has tons of different types of shows and different psychics, mediums, meditations, classrooms. I always brag on the archives of one of my favorite shows, the Renee Richards Show, Teaching Tuesday. Check that out. I tell you guys every week there is just a gold mine of information for not just psychic development, but really the process of coming into your own power. So check out her archives. There's amazing, amazing stuff in there. Okay. So, now that I got all that stuff out of the way, Rhonda, are you there?
Yep.
How are you doing? Welcome to our show. I'm so excited to have you on tonight.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. But Shelby, I have to point out real fast while I'm thinking of it. When you just said that you like to procrastinate and be lazy, what element do you think that is?
Oh, man. I didn't know you were testing me. I don't know.
I wanted to bring that into play, before we, because, so I remember that you said that, but actually that is the water element.
Oh, see, it just figures too, and it makes perfect sense that it would be. I'm really excited about this discussion. I have been watching some of your your little videos that you've been doing on your webpage or on your Facebook. Man, there's some really good information in there. This is some really cool stuff because I think ultimately this is about balance, right? Like we're trying to balance ourselves all the way to the core.
Yeah, and I think people don't really, I mean, we think of balance as in balance our kids, balance our school, balance our significant other, or, we think in that ways, but to be honest, there's so much more. It's only recently since I started a school, it's the Session School of Hermetic Meditation ran by Martin Falks, and honestly, that has like changed my life because that's what has helped me bring, balance into my life and how I'm learning about it. But I think, there's balance of so many things. So we've got to balance these bodies within us, the spiritual, the mental, the emotion, the physical, which, people don't realize. We have these elements, the fire, the air, the water, the earth. We have the masculine and feminine. We have this dark and light. And, people always want to think of themselves as only light, but we truly have to realize our dark and light and, bring all of that into balance. And I mean, all of it. There's the chakras need to be balanced. I mean, when you think about it, everything comes down to balance.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Polarity. Well, before we get too far into it, because I have a lot of questions, I'm super interested.
Please know, Shelby, and to everybody else, this is all stuff that I'm learning. Like, I am not a master in any way. I will answer everything to the best of my ability, but, I'm still learning. And, to me, a balance isn't something you just obtain and then you stay there. It's a struggle. We constantly have to work at it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, I told this story a couple of shows ago about when I used to work at the garden, we had this bonsai master that would come, and she was like the only female trained bonsai master from Japan. And she didn't like being called that master part because she always felt like she was constantly learning. So, and I loved that, what you said about, even if you're just starting out or whether you've been doing it a long time, this really is about it's about learning all the time. So if somebody wants to reach out to you, Rhonda, after the show, how can they connect with you?
Probably the best way is my Facebook. I mean, and they can, if they want to add me as a friend or if they just want to private message me, whatever, I will. If somebody reaches out to me, it might not be 24 hours depending on what I'm doing, but I will get back to them. I mean, fairly fast.
So tell me a little bit about what's going on in your life right now. Like, what are you doing? Because I know that I know you have a lot of stuff going on, and on top of all of the balance work. So what's going on with you?
Like in what context exactly?
Well, just sort of. I guess I want people to kind of get to know you a little bit better, and kind of what you're doing, what your goals are. I know balance is a big part of it. And you said you started this school.
I didn't just start it. I think I've been in it close to 2 years now. So, I think you know this, but other people probably don't. When I was born, I was obviously I don't remember necessarily at birth, but as a small child, I was just kind of different. I, would see spirits. I would, know different people's, including mine, like past lives. I would put my hands on people and heal them. I would heal little animals in the forest. And, I would do like all these things. Like my grandma, and I can't prove this, but my grandma said that I would even chant and, like if it was in drought, I would go, it would rain every time. She said, I can't prove that you did it, but she said it was never in the forecast. And so I had all these like, little different things. I spoke a couple languages when I was very young and which had to been carryovers. So, and I was always about love. I've always been about love and forgiveness. And so, I remember even being a little girl and thinking, gosh, darn it, this world's hard because I would be trying to speak telepathically to everybody and nobody was communicating back, or I would try to move things with my mind, or I would try to teleport. And I'm thinking, I have to like get up off my butt and walk? I just like, as a child, always, that's just how I was. And I didn't even realize, for a long time that I just thought people were being lazy, like why can't we do this? Or why am I in such a difficult world? And so I think, for me, I was just kind of born like, that. And I also experienced a lot of things in my life, like a lot of sexual abuse and a lot of mental abuse, and I mean pretty much any kind of abuse. And we all go through our trials and tribulations. But for me, I see everything that happened to me as an experience that made me be who I am today. And if I didn't know those experiences, if I didn't have those negative experiences in my life, I truly wouldn't understand the polarity of and appreciate, all the goodness in my life. So I know as crazy as that sounds, I feel like everything that happens to us, whether negative or positive, is a sacred experience. And I know that's kind of hard for some people to understand, but it's just all an experience, and we're learning from it. And I think that's what life is about.
I agree with you, Rhonda, a lot. I have a lot of similar things when I was a child also, so I relate to that. I remember hearing you speak briefly about that before, and I was just overjoyed when I heard you talking about it, because as a child, I think we don't know, we're told a lot of the things that we're experiencing or trying to do is our imagination. And I think as we get older, society really, wants us to get, especially in the United States, wants us to kind of get into the grind of life and to buckle down and to do the things that you have to do. And we lose a lot of our freedoms and imaginations with that. So really coming back into full circle with the whole, like experiencing all of it, like you said, the entire full circle, of everything, the polarities of everything, I think is.
And Shelby, do you remember as a kid? Do you remember that you didn't feel girl or boy? At least for me, I never felt like female, or I didn't feel like I was a girl or a boy. I liked boy stuff and I liked girl stuff. I didn't. I don't think it's children, or at least, maybe we're taught. People are like, oh, you like pink, or you like dolls because you're a girl, and you like this because you're a boy. Blah blah blah. Trucks. But really, as a child, I think we are more balanced. I feel like, as a child, why can we do some of those things sometimes? And like you said, imagination. And I think we have to balance more so as a child.
And I tend to, just having my own child, I can, and remembering my own experiences, I absolutely understand that. Last week when we were doing the inside of the chakras, I spoke about seeing in them clairvoyantly, and I would see there's these vortexes that I see inside the chakras, and then these, I call them energy atoms, that I would talk about. And I always said that when I see the vortexes, I always see them in pairs. So I really attributed that to the polarities of not just the individual, but the chakra in and of itself. So when I go into these little parts of energy, there's always polarity in it, always. And I've noticed that not just with the chakras, but even in your overall being, and of course it, all the way out into the universe, you see it. And I think there's something to that. So when you got into this element, because even in the chakras, there's real specific elements that I have found in each one, but I've also noticed that there's parts of other ones in there too. So when you're talking about the elements inside of us, you're speaking of and balancing those. I want to talk a little bit about, I think it was water, the one that I watched this earlier.
Yeah, I was actually going to start with water. I thought maybe I should tell a few characteristics so that we're all on the same
Absolutely.
page.
That's what I was hoping we could do.
Okay, well, let's start with water just because, and that's another thing. If you want to see what elements are dominant in your chart besides assess your psyche or personality in a sense, because we're going to talk more about how these elements, are shown more in our daily life. Because spirituality, I used to be so spiritual that it almost became an escape for me. And I've had to realize that, even the spiritual and the physical have to be balanced. If I'm just all spiritual, why am I even in this world? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So I've had to learn how to bring the physical into it. But so by our charts, before we come into this world, we choose our astrology, which I've been shown that as soon as we, through visions, that as soon as we leave our bodies, astrology, lifts. It's not going to stay with us. We choose that as we choose it's like we're choosing our body in a sense, and we're choosing the planets aligned and to give us these gifts or attributes or, experiences, learning experiences that we choose, that we feel like we need on a soul level. So, so one thing I would suggest, and I'm not a master of astrology in any means, I'm still learning, but it is to get astrology readings so you can find out, like, everybody usually knows their sun sign, but, we have the moon sign, we have the ascendant, we have so much more that I don't even, know how to intellectually speak of. We also have our fixed stars. And so all this comes into play, and all these affect like what elements we have within us. So I came in with a lot of water element in my chart. Strong water. So the water, I'll start with the water. It's adaptable. I'm not going to get into like all its properties, but it would be cold, wet, and magnetic. It likes to go with the flow. It can easily create success because water is so in tune with energies and emotions that are around them. But water uses its emotions to make its decisions. Now remember, I'm not saying logic, because water doesn't really know logic, it knows emotions. So it's kind of like water, the magnetic, it's all like being in the right place at the right time. Magnetic just attracts like, these great things. Obviously it's like being in the heart of the matters. Emotions are huge. Empathy's huge. Water's very expressive, but also water, and I can talk about some of my personal experiences with water in a minute, but water doesn't always know boundaries. It doesn't really know logic, duty, or reason. Those things just don't matter or aren't part of water. Water can be, when it's uncontrolled, so we have controlled water and in control water. And, an uncontrolled water can be inconsistent, it can manipulate. Selfish, but selfless at the same time. Selfish because they're so caught up in their emotions that that's all they can see at that moment. But other times they get caught up in somebody else, so they're selfless. So it's like being, both of those things when the water's not in check, water can be demanding, can be tend to addictive behaviors and to escaping. And this is for me too. I'm used to be so motivated by emotions. I would start a project, but when the emotion wasn't there anymore, guess what? I didn't finish it. So I didn't have those elements. Yeah, right. It took me the rest of the way through. Water's also intuitive, sensitive, nurturing. It feels more intensely than the other elements. Extremely empathetic, connect to whatever's around it, can amplify the good or positive in itself and others. Usually great healers have a lot of water in them. And it can become anything it wants to be. It changes forms. A lot of depth. It is a lot of depth to this. Also very childlike, innocent, playful. The signs for the water would be mainly Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. But like I said, people should not just go by their sun sign, because you have to look at your whole chart to see actually how much, of each element you tend to have. And then we can also work to make our elements stronger. For me, and I know you're probably thinking about this video that I made, but I would be so empathetic, though, that I couldn't even discipline my children because I was them. I was like, oh crap, this is me. And when you become that person, you just don't think in the context of, disciplining, because you're so, empathizing with them. And so I really had a hard time, I didn't have boundaries, and then that goes into play with sexual abuse too, but also, I let people dominate me, control me, walk all over me. And sometimes I lost a sense of myself because my water was so strong that I could be whatever anybody wanted me to be. But the thing was, I actually believed I was that at the moment, because water can truly change forms. But what would happen is I'd eventually, like, who am I? Because I would become the other person in a sense. And I mean, that would be great for them for a while, but at the same time for me, I didn't have an identity, when I was doing this. And, the water too is the emotional body, and which also leads into the astral. So, that is one of the reasons, like if you want to go farther with the water, my astral is very strong. I'm able to, be very lucid and astral. And that's a sign that somebody's water is very strong too. I would say is big astral type, experiences.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Especially the when you were talking about the healer aspect of it, and even the boundary part of it, I mean, it's all like so clear when you start talking about it, especially when you look at the element as it is in its liquid form versus its solid form, and then looking and seeing how those things change inside of us also, especially the boundaries things, because anybody that's ever been in a flood understands that when that water comes in, it like nothing can keep it. You can't. But it's the same thing with emotion and the flood of emotion. I really identified with you on the empathy part of it. It's so especially when you realize that you're coming into awareness of being an empath and you have the discernment of, okay, this is me and this is them, but at the same time you feel like, I'll know with my son sometimes that I know when he's upset. I know when he's upset. I don't have to be anywhere near him to know that he's upset, and feeling that with him. So it's amazing to me how, it's not only amazing to me how this stuff works, but it's even more, I guess it's kind of elusive in a way, like if you don't understand the elements. So how would you go about balancing something like that? Water especially.
Well, I should probably talk, do you want me to go over each element first? Do you want me to tell
Yeah, absolutely.
the elements, so maybe then I can fit them together a little bit more? Okay. So that was just the basics. And I think I said addictive behavior, but trust me, I escaped in every way possible. And I noticed too, the water often, like I was an emotional eater, and when I say these things, it doesn't mean it's going to fit for every single person, but usually you'd have a dominant amount. If I'm listing off all these things, you're going to have quite a few if that's your dominant element, So, also just for health reasons, I don't know if I know this for each element, but I know like if your water is out of balance, you're going to have more circulation problems, more reproductive problems, more pelvic problems. So, all that comes into play too. It's crazy, but when the elements are out of balance, they actually create havoc and chaos, within our physical body too. But, okay, so I'll do the fire element just so that everybody knows at least something about each element.
Absolutely.
The fire element's willpower. And like I said, I'm probably hit or miss on some of these, so this is just a basic of each element. But decisive, high energy, vitality. You're the hard workers, productive, very passionate, protectors, outspoken. Sometimes they talk quickly. Their signs, these are the Aries, the Leos, the Sagittarius, where water was a feminine sign, fire's masculine. They can also be enthusiastic. They're those people that are larger than life. They have that zest for life that we like to be around. I kind of think fire is sexy, but that's probably because my water's so strong and we tend to attract to the opposite. So like if I'm strong in fire and earth, then I'm going to attract, if I'm water and earth, then I'm going to attract the fire and air. But anyway, back to the dominant, they're strong. Fire likes to control, motivated, can be forceful. Keep in mind these are positive and negative, as all elements do. Determined, dynamic, joy, can be vanity, jealous, frustration, courageous, can anger easily. Sorry if I repeat any of these. Brave, confident, explosive in a good way or a bad way, proud, and patient. So that is pretty much or at least basically an idea of the fire. So I'll just move on to air really fast. Air is the sense of self. It's more around thoughts and words. Air is intellectual. They're like the smart thinkers. They like to analyze and probe. They're alert. They're curious. They often feel light. They can detach, perceptive, clever, overly pragmatic. Sometimes they can have problems with becoming so detached. They don't have the emotions. They have the thoughts, but not the emotions attached with it. Definitely the master of thought, but sometimes air likes to hang in the higher mental spheres. So that sometimes becomes a problem, and, we can talk about what we can do later, but they're also master communicators. They have no barriers to learning. I know people that are so strong in the air, they've taught themselves how to play self-taught piano, self-taught multiple languages. I mean, the air, seriously, they can teach themselves about anything. That's one of my weaker elements, everybody. And So the earth is kind of like all of them, but, and did I say water element? Oh, not water element. Fire, I told you what it was, the signs. Okay, so earth is the Taurus, the Virgo, and the Capricorn. It's more connected to the physical aspect of life. It's very practical. It's very grounded, strongly set in its ways, reliable. But the earth element does do well on nourishing themselves physically, emotionally, and spiritually. They are the builders. They can become too greedy or materialistic. Just keep in mind, because each element has a positive and negative, they have a strong sense of duty. Let's see. I think those are the 4 elements, mainly what I was going to say about those. Or like that's at least a little bit of a description about.
When and in your astrology chart, there's all of this is all over the place in your astrology chart, which is why you were saying to really get an in-depth reading from astrology.
Well, right, because people want to go with like, hey, my sun. Okay, so like for example, my sun sign is Taurus, which is Earth, and I do have a decent amount of Earth in me. But if you see the rest of my chart, so if I just thought I was Taurus, I'd be like, who the heck is that woman? Because that's not me. And I did this for years, Shelby. I was like, why? I'm a little bit of this Taurus, but I just totally don't fit with this sign. I mean, not completely, And then I started to get into it more, and it just factors in. I mean, so much farther than I even know to go at this point. But I do know, important, like the ancients talked about the fixed stars, and those are stars that we came in with in our life. And there's usually you come in with at least 2, I think up to 4 maybe. And so, like for example, I have a Pisces moon. I have a Scorpio ascendant. So right there is 2 big water. And then I have one of my stars is Pisces. So on top of that, which the fixed star, it doesn't change, meaning planets, energy, stuff doesn't affect. It's fixed. That means I'm tapping into that water at all times because it's fixed in my chart. So where planets change, and I'm not versed enough in this, so I'm not going to be able to talk to it at any great depth. But yeah, like I just want people to, if you want to know your elements, I mean, you can try to assess yourself, of course, but also go get a reading done where you see your whole chart, because that's how you're really going to tell what elements are stronger, and then you kind of know what you need to work on too. Like, well, okay, Rhonda has weaker air, so she needs to, and there's things we can do for each element to strengthen it. So, I work hard on earth and air. Well, I work hard to be grounded, I do have earth. I actually work harder on air and fire. So, because water likes to drown out that fire.
Yeah, well, that's what I was about to ask you. So, I mean, and they can sort of counteract, they can counteract each other too, correct? I mean, they don't always work with each other. They sort of.
Well, if they're in balance, they do work with each other. But when we're in balance, and even you go back and look at the art in ancient Egypt, it's all about the scales and balance. They even talked about cosmic harmony and balance, and all these things. So we know this goes back, way back, the balance thing. But if the elements are all in balance, then everything's going to work in perfect harmony. And, in a minute, we can also talk then about the spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical, because those are so important to have balance. And I think so many people get sick because, and I'm being so watery. I'm skipping around on subjects. Sorry.
No, you're okay. That's why on archives, the people listening on archives can say, well, let me just back that up to 2 minutes. No, it's fine. It's fine. It really is. I'm keeping up with you. I love this stuff because I think it's all important.
But so let's take an example on how can we, so if we have a weak fire in us, some things we can do is find something that you're passionate about, whether that be a book, a man, woman, anything, passion can be but find something you're passionate about. Physical activity also helps increase the fire. Another thing good is surround yourself with people that have that stronger element, which often you would anyway. Because most of the time, we're going to attract the area that we're weak in. And that's why it comes into people like, wow, you're totally off. How the whole opposites attract come into play. Well, if let's just say, Shelby, you're water and earth, then you're most likely, I'm not saying it happens every time, but most likely you're going to be attracted to the elements that you lack the most in. I mean, not
is
always,
so
but there's a good chance.
true. Yeah, that is so true. Very, very true. I agree with that 100%.
And then guess what happens to you? You become, you balance each other out. I mean, we should all strive to balance ourselves, of course. But, you know, when you find somebody in your life and they are the opposite of you, in a sense, it's going to bring some kind of a balance. And that's going to make, you know, we all, whether we know it or not, we are all striving for balance. I mean, that is what we want, even when we don't realize it, I mean, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, so
I mean,
that's the fire.
it's what helps us grow. That's where our biggest growth comes from.
And I think, and they, you know, they always say that the people, you become like the people you're around, too. So that's another thing. If you need more fire in your life, you know, get some fire people around you. If you're weak in earth, make sure you ground and center yourself, which I think grounding is good no matter what elements that you're, you know, weak and strong in, but grounding. Work with plants and gardens. Cook. Go barefoot outside. I just went barefoot outside right before I called you. Spend out, you know, time in nature, outdoors. Spend time with people, you know, that are down to earth, because that's going to bring, you know, we are like the people we're around. If you're weak in air, you can take a class. Education is good. You know, anything you can read, new hobby, travel, examine current events, and again, spend time with intellectual people. And you know, there's so many other things, and I'm only, you know, naming a few, but for weak water, explore mystical areas, connect with music, connect with any kind of film or anything that brings emotion to you, spend time with sensitive people, journal, reflect, or, you know, do something that makes you feel good, you know, and gratitude. I always think gratitude's a good one too. But, I mean, those are just some ways to strengthen those elements. And of course, there's many other ways, but I'm constantly, you know, doing these things once I realized how important that balance on every level, you know, actually
Well, and
is.
you don't just do your balance work through meditation either. You talked about actual physical. I mean, you're describing actual physical activities, which I think is really important especially for the physical body.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
meditation and yoga, those cover. So those are good for. Well, those are, now I'm getting back to, I keep wanting to go to the spiritual and mental and emotional and physical body, but with meditation, and, you know, I don't care if you do a walking meditation, a lay down meditation, a meditation with music, whatever you do, meditation and yoga are great to bring balance to all areas of your life, all bodies. And so, yeah, I actually have to work, because I was a big procrastinator, and, you know, I'd have these great ideas, but I wouldn't get anything done because fire is our action. Fire, with no fire, I could have all these great ideas, all this love to give, but who the heck was I giving the love to if I didn't have the fire to get out there and give it? I mean, you know, I know it sounds kind of silly,
that makes
but
perfect
seriously,
sense.
yeah, I would become so introverted, because that's what the water does too. I would become so introverted and stuff that, you know, I have all this love, and I think that I have things that I could share. I mean, I like to share. I like other people's to share. I feel like that's how we learn, you know, through each other's experiences and our own and others. And, but I never would, because I wouldn't have even done your show right now had I not brought more balance into my life, because I would have been too fearful, because water, gets very fearful and, you know, gets kind of anxious. And so yes, I meditate every day, but I also make sure that I'm taking a class or something, because my mental skills, and my air need more work than some of my other bodies. You know, my emotional body's strong. So more of that one, just trying to keep it in balance. Or my mental body or my air, and, you know, air and mental bodies tend to be a little bit weaker. So I try to do more. You know, I try to take classes. I try to do things, read things that I normally wouldn't, pick up new hobbies. You know, I really try to stimulate and develop those qualities traits that I'm low in. But I also follow the Franz Barden system, and so it's great. He's great. He wrote a lot of books to help people evolve, pretty much. And so he has these steps in his book, and, you know, so the first ones are on mental. Like, I do thought observation. So like for 10 minutes I have to, and this is for the mental and for air, I close my eyes for 10 minutes, let all the thoughts just pass through me, and then I have to recount them exactly how they happened.
Wow.
Afterwards. So it's like helping the memory, it's helping the mental. I also, so I do these exercises at home, and then, I also try to implement things and just into, the day, like when I'm actually out doing things too. So, but yeah, so that's like, helped me tremendously, and he goes through the levels, and he works on all the elements in this, the Spartan, this system. And, you work a lot on your soul mirrors, which is like, finding your shadows in a sense, or the dark, being okay, realizing that we have these polarities, and that, realizing that, like, okay, so I've been victimized in my life, but there's been times that, or I've been hurt in my life or bullied, but there's been times I've hurt people too. Having to come to that realization that, hey, I might pretend that I want to be perfect. I might tell myself that I'm better, but you know what? I'm not. And it's like having to realize that I have done these things in my life, I guess what you would want to call dark in a sense. I don't like dark in the sense of labeling it, but you know what I mean? I just feel we kind of have to sometimes, because but by dark, I don't even mean evil. When I say dark, I don't want anybody to think I mean evil or anything like that. I don't think like that. But so we've all been all polarities in a sense, And I think that you probably know this too, but I think we have to realize too that at one point, whether this life and another life, we've been the rapist. We've been the lover. We've been the sage. We've been the mystic. We've been the hero. We've been the warrior. We've been all these archetypes. We have been all these things. And I think you have to get to a point where you accept all this and you realize all this, whether it happened in this life or you want to pull from the wheel. I think we have to realize that we were, because, for me to be like, oh, Shelby, I would never kill anybody ever, which I wouldn't. But I'm at a certain we get to a point in consciousness. That doesn't mean we've always been at this point.
Right.
And
I think that's important too, because I think embracing, to me, and I don't know if this is exactly what you mean, but to me, I think working with this shadow self, or doing shadow work even, and the embracement of that is one of the biggest things that's helped my growth, not just in spirituality, but as a human being, and my compassion.
Yeah. Yes, me too. I mean, completely, me too. And I don't want anybody listening to this to think like, oh, she just thinks killing's great. I mean, please no, I don't mean any of that. I said that, and I was thinking, and that's not what I mean at all. I guess what I'm trying to get at is we have to realize that we're really, in the end, not better than anybody else. And everybody's just having their own experiences. And, maybe they're just at a different point on the wheel than somebody else is. Or maybe in this life, somebody wanted to experience more negative things. And I mean, it's just, we're all experiencing whatever we feel that, our soul or whatever feels that we need to experience to grow. And I just think, it comes down to not judging. But in order not to judge others, we first have to learn how to not judge ourselves. And that's
a big one. That is a big one.
Yeah. So. And sorry,
because we are
directed.
No, it's fine. This is great, because this is fantastic, because and going off of what you were just talking about, I think that we are typically, human beings we're our own worst critics, of ourselves, and I have found times of my life when I have been way out of balance, where I'm doing a lot of judging of other people's actions, whether they're good or not. I can find the good or bad in anything depending on where I'm at in my life. But it really hit me when I was working, the things that I would be discovering at work in other people, and it wasn't until I really looked at another human being as my reflection.
Yeah.
And if I that I had to look at myself and say, how is this reflecting me? Because I'm not this like how they are. But what parts of me are how they are? What parts of me don't want to relinquish control because I have to be in charge? And what parts of me, so I'm with you on all of that. And it really does go back to balance. And you mentioned, I'm not sure if you're ready to go on to this part yet, but you mentioned about the different bodies that we have.
Yes. When I think a lot of times when people think of health, that they think of their physical body. And the physical body is important, but we have these other bodies that factor into our well-being. And even the ancient cultures would point to the connection between like body, mind, spirit, and how all this made up the whole. And, it truly does, because the physical body is affected by our emotions and our thoughts, and it directs how we feel and, how our energy levels sway, our minds, our thoughts, and it really, people get sick and they'll be like, well, gosh, Rhonda, I eat healthy and I exercise. Oh, well, okay. I mean, that's great. That is great, because that is great for the physical body. But if the spiritual body, the mental body, if all the bodies, all these layers aren't working together and all strengthened, then they're going to be imbalanced and they're going to create havoc. Within you, this is where diseases and things start to come from. So like our spiritual body, it would be like, in my view, kind of like your connection to energy. For some people, it's religion or tied to it, but for some people, it's not. The energy is going to trickle down from the spiritual body through the source or the universe, whatever you want to call it, and your spiritual body will then first enter the next body, which would be the mental body. And to fully access the spiritual aspect, our spiritual body, we need to have some kind of daily practice that helps keep our connection, whether it be sitting in nature, meditation, some people like prayer. It doesn't have to be any of these things. It just needs to be something that you find in yourself that you feel connected to divinity, to the divine. And the thing is, if our spirit body's blocked, then the info and the energy, it doesn't flow freely from our spiritual body. And the spiritual body then goes through the mental, the emotion, and the physical bodies. So it's going to make it so energy's not flowing right, information's not flowing right. So with our spiritual body, we need to work on our intuition. And, everybody has intuition. We just don't always trust it, but we all have it. And we need to work on our spirituality and connect that. And however, like I said, whatever people find for them that works. But we have to work on that as much as we do our mental and our emotional bodies and our physical, because our spirit body, it creates the solid, foundation. And, me personally, practices for the spiritual body, for me, meditation every day. I do it twice a day, actually. 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes at night, but whatever is great, even 5 minutes. Study consciousness, religion, philosophy, sit in silence, or, just try to connect with yourself. Mm-hmm. And that would be like our first body, which is called, it probably can be called different things, but the spiritual body. So then when we move on, go ahead. You can talk.
Well, I was going to ask you, and you're also saying these different bodies have elemental connections. So as we're balancing our elements, the parts of ourselves, specifically in the astrology charts that you were speaking about, this helps to nourish and feed those bodies. So it's like food, right? It's like
and everything comes into play. You know what I mean? All these things like fit together. I always think like when you really start to look at it, and just how life is, everything just kind of pieces together, fits together like a puzzle.
That's very true.
And all the bodies, because the elements are a part of us and, need to be balanced. All these bodies, elements, all these things work together. It's like all these different layers in our body. And then so our spiritual body, though, would move on. The next body would be the mental body. Now, the mental body would be the surface level. It's your thoughts on a surface. On a deeper level, it's going to be the domain of beliefs, desires, values, goals. Now, as energy comes down from spirit to the mental body, if you're operating primarily from the mind, there's going to be a disconnection in the flow of the energy. And to be honest, Shelby, this happens a lot in society nowadays because the mind is our predominant force. And when this imbalance happens with the mental, it can keep us in a perpetual state of just like thinking, plotting, strategizing, doing. It almost like can become obsessive though, obsessive with our thoughts in a sense. And so the mental body is I have to practice. My mental body has been my weaker body because my emotional body and spiritual body are much stronger. And so actually my mental and physical were the weakest, and those are the two I work on the most. But for mental would be set goals for yourself. Get a coach or mentor to keep you focused. Like, that's one thing I love about my school. I mean, not only is my teacher like amazing and humble and, great, but also he keeps me focused. He redirects me when I need it. And honestly, I would want to be like him. They always say, like I told you, be around people that you would like to be like, and he's very balanced. But also for the mental, any kind of education, any kind of learning, puzzles, any kind of stuff like that. So like if you have an open spiritual connection, that we were talking about the spiritual body a minute ago, this enables us to access higher levels of energy through the mental body. So then the mental body, is more balanced, it's making better choices, and it's, making everything better for us and everybody around us, because the spiritual body is now flowing into the mental body. Keep in mind, if you're strengthening these bodies and you're keeping it in balance, I mean, this is what's supposed to happen. And then we would move down to the emotional body, which is our past, present, future. It has all our emotions, every experience. If we have an experience, it like will generate a feeling for us, and then it's associated with something like from our past. And then we learn that we start to label and we identify things with our emotions. That's what this body's doing. And so like all our memories are stored here. Everything, all this stuff is stored in our emotional body. And so it's just like the same thing. As energy flows down from the spirit, the mental, to the emotional. If it bumps into all the stored baggage, what do you think? The energy's not going to flow like it's supposed to.
Right.
It's going to become turbulent. And that's why people don't realize that all these bodies work together. And then, what's going to happen if there's this turbulence so we're going spiritual, mental, and now the energy's trying to flow through the emotional body, but this emotional body is all blocked, has baggage. So then it creates all these fears that we project on ourselves and onto others, causes anxiety. And then what's going to happen? The emotional body is going to trickle down to, the physical body. And the physical body, which being the last body but not the least by any means, is, a reflection of just all aspects of who we are. It's kind of like a barometer that indicates, wow, how is everything going in our life? So, when I think of the physical, I think of healthy exercise. But, too much excessive mental or emotional stress, what's it going to do to this physical body? Because all these bodies work together. So
right, and then we end up with disease and discontentment in our body, and I find that really fascinating too, and how those different bodies connect with the chakras and the meridians and the things like that within our what we harbor inside the physical body. Because I think energetically speaking, well, I should say physically speaking, is just somebody that's walking around on the earth. That's what our main concern has always been for a long time. I know for me, I didn't pay any attention to any of my other bodies. I didn't pay attention to any of my polarities. I didn't pay attention to anything. I was only working for my physical body and what gave my physical body pleasure, whether it was working out or eating something or stuff like that. So I feel like working, even simple balance exercises, like you were talking about, going out and grounding yourself, walking out in nature, just little simple things like that, it ripples way out into all of these other bodies.
Oh, yeah, completely. And, like taking time to actually nurture ourselves can open up all these energy channels. And, for me, it has recently. I've always felt energy, like you, we can feel energy, we can feel other people's energy and stuff. But recently my energy, oh my gosh, it goes like, it goes around my entire body. I can feel it like, everywhere. Like before, maybe I'd feel it come out of my hands, or, sometimes it would have now it's like out of the feet, out of the, I can feel all the chakras open, the third eye open, the crown, everything's just like I said, I struggle, and I don't mean every moment, but I work hard at it. And I noticed a huge difference. It's like all the channels in me are opening up. And I mean, honestly, it's just, I have experienced so much growth just by and I'm a huge spiritual person. I always have been. I've always had, certain abilities. But I'll tell you, my biggest growth has came by working on balance. And I could laugh because it seems so easy. Everything we're talking about kind of sounds like, well, almost things we think, we should know or we've heard. But I wish I had taken it, serious a lot sooner. But, when we have this clear connection, this energy is going to like flow through us, and all the layers of our being, this creates. And so we're spiritually connected. We're mentally stimulated. We're emotionally centered. And this is all what makes a vibrant life.
Mhm. I totally agree with that. And I think even being able to feel those things on a physical level, I remember the first time I worked with my mentor and she grounded me. And I'll never forget, it was the first time I ever felt energy move through my body. And it was just the neatest physical sensation to have, because it almost makes and at that point it made it real to me. It made energy real to me.
Yeah.
And lately I've been, I don't know what is going on, but I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I will feel my heart chakra, which has been expanding. I'll feel it pulsing, like pulsing and vibrating, and I'll feel it doing it all the way up into where my third eye is, and I'll wake up and I'll start smiling because I get feeling that energy, and feeling and knowing that even though I can't see it, that's been my struggle with life. If I can't see it, it doesn't exist, and so knowing and feeling it has made these things become concrete to me. It's helped me in my faith.
That's funny though, because we're the opposite. But I had too much the other way. I would become disillusioned because I would believe everything.
Right, right.
So there needs to be that like in between. I need to find that.
Well, and you said something earlier that I could completely get behind. My wife is literally the opposite of me, not just physically, like I'm a little overweight and short, and she's like this 6-foot tall goddess, but she's also very emotional. She likes talking about her feelings, and she wants to talk about it's all about feelings with her. She's very watery in that way, and I'm not. I don't want to talk about your feelings. I certainly don't want to talk about my feelings. But it's been so good to be with her because where I am always in my mind, she's always in thinking, everything has to be rational. To her, she's very much part of using her imagination. She's very flowing with her emotion in that way. And I think that we balanced each other out in that way. And it's been a beautiful relationship as a result, because we do balance each other out. And I think you're right. That's key in development, is finding partners, not just relationship partners, but friendships, people that can balance you out.
Yeah. But you know what? I feel like find happiness to me, the more I become balanced in my life, the more I am attracted to balance. So before, now where I was attracted to maybe more masculine, more fire, now I'm like, oh, it's like I have to step back. Like, okay, the things I was once, now I feel like my feminine and masculine's becoming more balanced. I still have a stronger feminine. But as all these things come into balance, I find people reacting to me differently. And as well as me being attracted to different things than I used to be. I mean, I still think it's great what you were talking about, because I do feel like we can bring in that balance from other people. And that also, like, with her, you learn from her and she learns from you. You know what I mean? You're learning from her elements and she's learning from yours. And so, you guys can strengthen your own elements within you just by listening and, to the other person.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I have a couple of questions that I kind of wanted to clarify a couple things if you.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Shelby, because I know I just I just get start flowing.
No, I was good with it. So for me, somebody that in my chart, it's very much air, and then a little bit of water sprinkled in there, like here and there. But for me, I don't know. So you mentioned especially because when I get hooked onto something, whether it's physical exercise or something that is passionate, I noticed something when you were talking, and I'm like, oh yeah, I can be passionate. And then I started my mind started wandering to, well, everything that is passionate to me is I've hooked it back into the process of air, right? So, and you were talking about how water and fire work together, and I started thinking about, well, how air and fire work together, and increasing a flame, or doing stuff like that. Or if I talked about my emotions, I almost disconnect from my emotional state and just talk about with communication, a very airy-like way of talking about my feelings. I have to disconnect from them to speak on them almost. So if somebody like me who's very strong in that way, I like it. I like it. That way.
I know, I like my water too.
It's like, I love it. So if I wanted to, say, increase the part, because when I go into the water parts of myself, that's in my emotional body. It's the feelings I feel are either fear or anger. And I've come into a process where I'm able to kind of really relate to love and feel love and express love in those ways. But very much so, fear will still run me a lot of times. So if as an air person, or even as a fire person, or any person.
Well, the fear, though, Shelby, sounds like your water being out of balance.
Well, that's what I mean. So how would I, as somebody that very much likes that air aspect of me, how can I incorporate?
Well, you're just going to have to work on all the other. You're just going to have to work hard.
You're supposed to give me the answer, Rhonda.
So to have all that air, then you need to journal. Like, one thing I think would be good for you if you don't already, and you might already, but when you write down your feelings though. So don't be the Shelby. Like, you could have two journals. It could be the Shelby's journal of my thoughts with no emotions attached, your airy side of you. But then one thing that what I think would be good for you is to really take time and just write down how you feel. But maybe okay, whatever, Wednesday, this is, try to think of what you felt that day. Honestly, try to think of everything that you felt, and try to start to connect more with that emotional, side of you.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. That's awesome.
Rhonda,
I can keep going on.
Listen to your wife.
Yeah, don't say that she's listening, Rhonda. She's listening. Don't tell them.
But also take cues from her. Or, when she wants to talk about her feelings, think of it. I don't mean this in any way, negative or bad, but take the time to talk to her about her feelings and think of it like, okay, you know what? Shelby, as yourself, wow, if I'm taking the time, not only am I doing something loving for my wife and she appreciates it, but you're also helping yourself, because that is one of your, traits, or, one of your elements that needs to be more balanced. So, even spend time talking, make yourself. I don't find air. See, we would get along good too, because a lot of your stronger elements are my weaker ones, but, I don't find some of the air stuff, it's really hard for me, and so I don't find it enjoyable to do mental exercises. Well, some stuff, I like to learn, but you know what I mean, like the memory and doing all those things. I have to work hard, and I don't like it, but when you make yourself do these things, even if you don't like it at first, you will see results. And
I'm all about that. I'm all about that.
One thing I do want to say is, once we get everything into balance, and I mean everything, like the elements, all these bodies, all the stuff I'm talking about, the only thing left to live in is the present moment. Because you fixed everything. Do you know what I mean?
That's the balance. That's the balance.
Yeah, that's the balance. You're only in and you hear all those people, live in the now. There's only the now. Live in the present. But in the end, when everything is balanced, nothing else exists besides the present moment.
That's absolutely right. And and that could be a whole nother show on a topic, being in the now, because that is truly the ultimate goal. There's no fear in that right now moment. There's no sadness. There's nothing. It's just,
Shelby, another thing for you, go swim, go be in water, take baths. Honestly, and another thing that the water does, if you get cooler water because of warmer water, well, I mean, any water to connect with is great, but you can do something what's called magical washing. So let's just say you've been around a lot of negativity. Go take you can either take a cool shower, it doesn't have to be ice cold, but cooler, or put cold water on in the faucet and wash your hands and say to yourself, because water is very cleansing on all levels, say to yourself that all toxin, all negativity is leaving and going down the drain. And so, that's one thing to use the water element for, to cleanse, to cleanse ourselves.
Ooh, I like that. That.
But for you, if you're wanting to try to balance, I would work on also, with the water, I think you're going to have to go in and, this is going to be where you have to do it. But if there's things in your life that you haven't forgiven about yourself, or just go in and I've learned for me, I've had to go into all my memories and look at it from every perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been
hard.
A lot.
That's tough. That's been tough, but it's been so beneficial. It's been a wonderful process. I continue to look forward to this whole process because I feel like I'm constantly developing, and I love that. I'm so glad I met you, Rhonda. I'm so happy that I met you.
I know. I'm so glad that Renee introduced us, and I love her too, by the way.
Yeah, she's pretty cool.
Yeah, she is.
Okay, well, we're at the end of the hour. I want to thank you again for coming on tonight, Rhonda. I have learned a whole lot, and I hope everyone else did, especially anybody that's going to be listening later. There's lots of information in this show, I think. So thank you so much. And if you guys want to find Rhonda or connect with her, you can do that on Facebook, Ronda Starky. You can message her, she said, or send her a friend request. And Rhonda, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Shelby. And I am sorry. I tried to cram so much information into a short period of time. So I want to apologize to anybody that listens if it seems rushed or that I'm hopping around. But I feel balance is so extremely important that I wanted to cram in as much as I could.
Hey, yeah, that's basically every one of my shows. I talk as fast as I can to get all the information in. So yeah, I should just make the shows longer. Whatever. Okay.
Thank
Rhonda,
you,
I appreciate it. Again, I'm going to go cannonball in the swimming pool after the show's over. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody. You guys have a good night. Talk to you later. Bye.